Okay, now we were the only game in town, the only game in the world. We're the only country that had strong industry, and we were at peak performance. And the rest of the world was demolished. Okay, so we had a competitive advantage, right? We had no reason to change anything. Where were the Japanese?
They were already there, wasn't
The Japanese were demolished. The Japanese believed that their emperor was God up until the point they lost the war. And we came in and said, you got to tell them you're not God. It just ain't going to work. And so now, what?
They weren't very industrialized anyway.
Well, think about their war machine. I mean, their war machine their war machines destroyed Pearl Harbor.
That's why they didn't bomb. That's true, but I mean, they weren't.
Now, at the point of the end of World War II, everything was bombed. Now, how did they bomb back then? How do they bomb today? Well, they fly real high, and they have a pinpoint spot that they're trying to hit, and the machinery does it all, and so there's very little collateral damage. How did they bomb in World War II? They'd take a whole bunch of planes, they'd release a whole bunch of bombs, and they'd have a 5-mile tornado path leading to where the factory might be. And so, who was living around the factory? Workers. What did the Japanese buildings look like? Paper and wood. So, I mean, they would lose 10,000 people in one night of bombing. You know, so that's the difference in technology. That's the difference in the mindset. Why were we doing that? Because we had to break the country's back in order to win the war. There were plans the Japanese had to drop dirty bombs in San Francisco, in L.A. I mean, that would have made San Francisco and L.A. barren to this day. More or less, you know, there's all kinds of ways that could happen. But dirty bombs, you know, didn't have to blow up, they're just dirty. And so, you know, radioactive. Why were they using kamikazes? Because they lost all their really good pilots, and it's all they have left. People can fly and crash, you know, basically, and they were in desperate straits. They had kamikaze boats. We were estimating that we'd lose 1 million men just in landing in Japan. You know, so, and we estimated they'll lose 10 million. You know, because we were going to land, and the Japanese were told that our soldiers were so terrible that whenever we took over Okinawa, for example, there were lines of people jumping off cliffs because they didn't want to be tortured by us. Now, the Japanese were the most brutal people. They were more brutal than the Nazis as far as in wartime. So the people who fought in Japan were very hostile toward Japanese for the rest of their life because they were tortured beyond what the Nazis did. I mean, Nazis were bad. The Japanese took over Korea and used it as a brothel. You know, so they weren't just nice people that we just happened to fight. They were just. I mean, the whole mentality of that was that way. So now, can you put you cannot judge the history of you cannot judge the past by what's going on today. You got to look at what was going on then, right? So you gotta understand, why did the bombs drop? Because it probably saved 10 million people. You know, I mean, it would have been a lot worse. We could have lost a whole generation of people. That's how serious it was. And the whole country is behind it. And we didn't even talk about the Nazis. But the reason to talk about Japan, because Japan was wiped out. We brought in, we took over Japan. And we brought them up. We took them out of this. We helped them build their industries. We helped teach them how to do this. We helped teach them. And what were the Japanese people? The Japanese were worshiping their emperor. They thought he was God. So now we come in, we replace their emperor, so they're willing to do anything we say. And they believe what we say. And we treated them, hopefully, you know, in a good way. I mean, we brought them up. But now, in the 50s, we were the only game in town, and Japanese were making junk toys. In the 60s, junk toys. In the 70s, starting to catch on, huh? You know, starting to make good cars, starting to do things. In the 80s, I bought a 77 Celica, Toyota place here in town, and at 130,000 miles, the clutch was going out. I sold the car. I thought, well, you know, it's 130,000 miles. It ain't going to go any further, because I was used to American-made cars. Just, I didn't have many cars because I was young, but I'm just, you know, American-made cars died at 100,000 miles. Planned obsolescence, right? Every 100,000 miles, you got to replace this car. Every year, you're going to buy a new one. Guess how much that 77 Celica cost me? $5,000 less than $5,000. Yeah, somewhere around 4, somewhere around there. But the comparable car to it was a Mustang Cobra, and it was an imitation Cobra, not the real Cobra, but it's a small, little, same size Cobra. And I had a choice between that and the Celica, and I took the Celica, and it was probably a good thing I did, because, you know, American-made cars were planned obsolescence. The Union and the America companies were putting Coke bottles on strings just to make it rattle, to irritate the customers. You know, why do we not have this advantage that we just, I mean, we had the advantage. The companies that were built in the 50s were old by the time the companies in Japan were being built in the 70s. So brand new against 30-year-old companies, 20-year-old companies, 80s, 70s, you know. And so now we got new technology against old technology, and the Americans didn't think they had to change anything. We're still putting everybody under the thumb. We're still doing all this other stuff, planned obsolescence, no quality, and everything else, and we think we can do this forever. And a lot of Theory X people, like you're saying, well, you know, pretty soon we'll be the third world country again if it keeps going like that. Because the only way a country makes wealth is by creating something from nothing. You don't do it by selling each other insurance. You don't do it by selling each other real estate. You do it by you know, making something out of nothing is how you build wealth on a national level. Okay, so that's a lot of stuff, right? But this is the Japanese mindset, high quality. I bought an 85 Celica convertible. Guess how many miles I had on that when I sold it? 600,000 miles. Person I sold it to put 200,000 miles on it and sold it again, and never had any trouble with the engine. So I had 800,000 miles on it that I know of, and it's still on the road, I'm sure.
Japanese plan 20 years in advance.
There's a whole
20-year plan where American companies have a 5-year plan.
that was real interesting. We're very competitive now. You know, good companies in the U.S. are very competitive with good companies all over the world now. But at the time, it was a lot different. But you're right; they had 200-year plans in some cases. I mean, how do you plan for 200 years?